sat around and talked. So this year I have to do the speaking. My name is Chuck Hendricks. I work for United Carrier International Union. I am the Director of National Contracts and Internal Support for the union. And what that means is I work on our large national agreements that we have with airline, food service employees, railroad food service employees, airport concessionaires, and major tech companies, where we have broad national agreements. In this case, particularly what we're talking about is the people that put food and drinks on the airplanes. Across the country, there are about 25,000 or so airport catering workers. They work for companies called Gate Gourmet, Sky Chefs, Gate Serve, Axe, Bornstein, a number of other companies, but the largest ones being Sky Chef and Gate Gourmet, which collectively make up about 18 to 20,000 of the 25,000 airport catering workers. In the last 2 years, we begun a campaign to, one, develop greater membership in the industry, and two, lift up the standards of airline catering workers. United Airlines directly employs their own airline catering workers, and it's about 2,500 workers throughout the country. The company engaged in a rather vicious attack on the rights of their workers to unionize, and got the government to stop a vote for over a year before the workers could unionize. Ultimately, they did win through a very contested and heated election, with about 78% of the workers voting yes in the union. So expanding to now have another 2,500 workers in the union. But the bigger part of that is unionization is about changing people's lives, not just about becoming members of the union. And airport catering workers really are amazingly, some of the worst treated workers that I've ever experienced. Even in the restaurant food service industry, it's just amazing how bad they are. Food service workers, when we started this campaign in 2017, across the entire country, actually averaged slightly lower than $11 an hour. Most workers, if they had access to health care, it was only the worst plan allowed by law, which is called a bronze level health care plan, at the highest price allowed by law. So you could not get any worse and have it called health insurance in America. It only covers about 60% of the cost, and you pay an $6,000 deductible. And at that rate, only about 28% to 30% of the workers even had that health insurance. Most people had Medicaid or no health care. Since 2017, our membership in this industry has engaged in a long, concerted campaign that is hamstrung by being a very large industry with a very powerful corporate entities of the airlines, but also by the law. Workers who make the food on the airplane that go on the airplanes are covered by the same law that cover pilots and flight attendants and airline mechanics, the Railroad Labor Act, which does a couple of things differently than most of the laws that we deal with, in that our members cannot engage in concerted activity in self-help until the President of the United States allows them to. That is not likely to happen right now. So we have to find creative ways to go about having a campaign that doesn't involve striking. So over the course of the last 2 years, our membership, like Nelson, who's not here today, have engaged in picket lines against the airlines rather than against their employer. So we've had lots of pickets at airports. Brothers and sisters from Local 11 here, or sisters from Local 11 here, have had lots of actions at LAX Airport. Same thing in DC, right, where I know folks in the Catholic Labor Network came to those actions in DC. We have engaged in not just picket lines, but actual civil disobedience. And I think 9 airports around the country on the same day. About a month ago, we had over 300 workers sit down in the street blocking the airports, or lay down in the terminals doing die-ins at the ticket counters. Workers have engaged in lobbying activity with politicians. We have passed law after law after law to raise up the standards in various airports. In LA, we passed an ordinance calling for wages and healthcare of at least $20 an hour. Groundbreaking with Local 11. In Chicago, ordinances raising wages up to 14 something. New York, $19 an hour through passing ordinances. So engaging in local politics to change the life of workers. This is through worker activity and worker lobbying and political power. We continue on this campaign in spite of the fact that the politics don't really allow us to go on strike. Our membership has gotten more and more mobilized to fight for better jobs here, including this year taking a strike vote to send a message to the airlines, to the politicians, about how serious these situations are, with 97% of the members voting to go on strike. We have received, been working with the Catholic Labor Network, both in terms of organizing in the Catholic community, in terms of the community coming to actions, and in terms of mobilizing our resources to engage with bishops to show their support for workers. At the end of the day, this entire industry is a subcontracted industry where 3 major decision makers decide the livelihood of 25,000 workers, which is the CEOs of Delta, United, and American Airlines. 100% of the cost of these contracts is based on what United, Delta, and American decide to pay for the cost of food. And they have so far decided they would like the lowest cost option, which is to provide as close to minimum wage jobs as possible with as close to the worst health care available by law without retirement plans. So while we haven't settled these fights yet, we have changed people's lives. I said that the average wage 2 years ago was around $11. I just got the numbers from January 1st of this year. The result of all of our living wage fights and our fighting with the airlines to make them pay more has resulted with the average wage rising from about 11 to $15.05 an hour right now. So, that's in the course of 2 years. Where we are now is we're continuing to push to make these jobs better, either through getting contracts or getting policies passed or whatever it takes to raise the wages and raise the benefits. Our members are continuing to engage in actions. We have more civil disobediences. The members at Miami International Airport will be engaging in a fast during the Super Bowl festivities that Miami this year will be widely publicized. And now Clayton and the Catholic Labor Network are engaged in organizing bishops to send letters to the airlines, directly asking them to improve the lives of airline catering workers. And so that's where this fight stands now, and will continue until we achieve much better jobs for airline catering workers.